So our next project, or my next project, is a bass for a friend of mine. So this was in my good friend Brian's shop that had been in the roof in the loft for a long time. An old Hondo bass. I don't think they even make Hondos anymore. It's in quite a bit of disrepair because it's been sort of sitting in the attic for years and years, so it's got a rusty bridge and keys that don't move properly and etc. But actually, I think a little bit of refurbishment, it could be a very playable bass. He's given me some pickups to go with it, and yeah, I don't think it will be a bad little project. We'll shield it out, get it all wired up, we'll give everything a clean, get everything working, and hopefully we'll have a nice bass by the end of it. So all the hardware is off and I've put it in this container. I've given it a little brush with a wire brush to get some of the worst of the rust off and the corrosion, but I've found the best way to do this is by buying cola and letting it sit in cola overnight, and literally it eats everything off of the metal and it should be gleaming tomorrow morning. So we'll pour this in. And the sugarier the better, so don't get the diet one or the sugar-free one. You want the sugary one. And that's it. It should eat all the stuff off, and tomorrow morning we'll have some really nice shiny hardware. 24 hours after we dropped all this in cola, and I've poured the cola out and given it all a rinse with some soapy water, and yeah, as you can see, it's incredible. It just gets all the nasties off. Everything's super shiny and everything's clean. I mean, Lord only knows what it does to your insides when you drink it. I mean, I still drink it, but it does a great job of cleaning up all the gunk off the metal. So that's all done. We can start putting the hardware back on now. Back in the warm, not in the garage in November, and I'm just going to put all the hardware back on. Just given the body a bit of a clean up, just with some furniture polish and a microfiber cloth, and it seems to do the business. It's got all the dust and all the stuff off. I don't mind all these scratches. It's a used bass. The only thing that's slightly annoying is there's a split in the top of the fretboard there, but it's not too bad, and my friend is just learning the bass, so with a bit of luck and a fair wind he won't be playing Billy Sheehan solos just yet. So the rest of the neck is pretty good, so should be fine. Like they say in Nashville, apparently there's no money above the 5th fret, so it's fine. Okay, let's get all the hardware back on and then see about getting some electrics looked at. In terms of the wiring on this, as you can see, I've started to shield the cavity out. I'll probably shield all the way around to here, and I've bought this quite nice sort of tortoiseshell pearloid kind of scratch plate, which I think will look quite nice. And if you've ever seen my videos before, you'll know that I'm not a massive fan of tone controls. So what I'm going to do is this pot that I've got from a previous project, I'm just going to take the capacitor out and use this as a volume pot and one jack input, and just put a stopper in to fill the hole where the tone control would be. It's just a personal thing. I'm not a massive fan of tone controls on guitars or basses. I just like the sound of the pickup without any adjustment. So as it's for a friend of mine who's learning, rather than let him worry about tone controls. He can just get on with learning to play the notes. So let's get wiring. Got some first world problems with this bass, so pop the pickups in after I shielded out everything, and the scratch plate lines up with the holes, well, one set of holes that was already in here. It looks like someone's changed the scratch plate before, but it's fine. But I ordered a scratch plate and it lines up with the holes, but it doesn't line up with the pickups. In fact, it doesn't line up at all. Even when you take the pickups out and try and slot them in, they don't fit, as you can see. So I'm going to have to get a knife and take a bit off this edge and take a bit off this edge, and then try and open these two screw holes a little bit. How annoying. So as mentioned, the pickups didn't quite fit, but rather than chopping it out with a knife as first thought, I just drew around the pickups, and where the lug holes for the screws didn't fit, I've literally just filed them out, and that seems to have worked, and it doesn't look like it's done much damage at all to the front. So let's go and try it. Sorted. They fit now and everything lines up. The nut on this guitar was absolutely shot to pieces, so I removed it, and it fell apart as I removed it. It was really shot to bits. So I bought a pre-cut, pre-slotted bone nut for the bass, 42mm, and I just need to install that. It's slightly too wide for the slot, so I'm going to have to file out the slot a bit just to get it to fit, and then we'll glue that in, and then if we need to, we'll get the nut files out and make the slots the right size to sit the strings in nicely. That's the new nut glued in. Took a bit of filing with a very small file to get the slot the right size, but sat in there really nicely. So if we need to, we'll get a nut file and do these slots if they're not quite the right size. But shielding all done, wiring complete. As mentioned, I'm just doing a volume pop, so it's a very simple wiring circuit. I've shielded it all out. The pickups were quite difficult to get in, mainly because of the scratch plate not fitting, as we mentioned, but it's all wired up now. I just need to connect them to the scratch plate and get some strings on it. Well, the bass is back together and I've plugged it in and it all works. Volume works, no crackling, anything like that. The string spacing over the pickups is all good, but you could literally get a bus between the frets and the strings. Basically the nut is super tall. I mean, it's unbelievably tall. So this is the finished Hondo bass. Before we plug it in and get some sounds, there was one quite big issue with it, and I don't know how this was a production guitar the way it was. I couldn't work out why the string height was so far off the fretboard. I tried making the bridge higher, I tried changing the nut, I adjusted the truss rod, I did all sorts of things, and eventually I took it to my luthier friend, who had to put an enormous shim into the neck pocket to get it up to the height of a playable bass. Now, this is the original neck and the original neck pocket, so I don't know how, I mean, I know it's a cheap bass, but I don't know how it was playable before. It must have been incredibly high. So anyway, that was the main thing, and once he'd fixed that, he did the intonation and did the neck setup, and it actually plays fine now. It's quite a nice bass to play, actually, and I'm quite pleased that someone's going to get this to learn on. A friend of mine is going to have this and start learning the bass. I think for a beginner this is going to be a great bass. So while we're here, let's get some sounds.